a strong wind blowing, bringing down the world of sun.
You are live, sir.
Hi. We should be rolling the music, the pre-script, please, before we begin. The pre-roll. Thank you.
Light on the horizon of starboard bow, feel the spirit rising, hear the mighty shout. Oh, watch the whole creation turning inside out. He's making his will made known. The time for peace is now. Leaders at the table talking about an end to war. We need more than chess moves. We gotta open up the door. Oh, and let a little sunlight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 10th annual Race Amity Day celebration. This year's celebration theme is Reset to Our Destiny, E Pluribus Unum. E Pluribus Unum, our national seal, means out of many, one. As we experience one of the most trying times in our nation's history, we need to focus our attention on a common unifying goal. Out of many, one. Inherent in this goal is access, equity, and social justice. We're happy you're with us as we traverse the arc that leads and truly bends to justice. As a means of giving material substance to the moral goal of E Pluribus Unum, we're dedicating this year's Race Amity Day celebration to the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Fund. This is a small but meaningful way to walk the walk to E Pluribus Unum. In the midst of our shared trials and tribulations, anguish and sadness, and cry for equity and justice, we must be mindful that we have all been traumatized. As my dear friend Becky Schuster, Assistant Superintendent of Equity for the Boston Public Schools, said recently, we have been eyewitnesses to and traumatized by 2 brutal murders, which we must cope with. I am searching for ways to make a positive change to come from this. As I see visuals and read the many profound and eloquent commentaries and proposals from high and low alike, I ask myself, what contribution can we make at the National Center for Race Amity that can bring solace and uplift to our collective spirits and hearts? To that end, I want NCRA to be what back in the day we call the water boy. We will support the valiant crusaders, young and old, black and white and brown and tan, as they raise the cry demanding justice. We will reset the narrative to our destiny of E Pluribus Unum. To you who have joined us Today, we hope to bring a refreshing and soothing tonic to weary hearts and an uplifting elixir containing the reminder that right is might and the reassurance of the scientific, moral, and spiritual truths that we are one human family. We invite you to come into the huddle of unity, to share, refresh, and further revitalize our individual and collective spirits. Celeste Headlee will guide us through the inspiring comments and artistic expressions as we celebrate Race Amity Day. Celeste, an internationally respected journalist appearing on CNN, NPR, PBS, and her own radio and television special programs, is devoted to access, equity, and social justice, and serves on the National Center for Race Amity Advisory Board. Please welcome Celeste Headlee. Celeste?
Thank you very much, Smitty. Today you will hear reflections from a number of people. Civil rights icons like Dolores Huerta, actors Rainn Wilson and Penn Badgley, renowned authors and social commentators Joy DeGruy and Debbie Irving, and public officials as well, the former governor of Mississippi, William Winter, and former New Orleans mayor, Mitch Landrieu. They will help us think more deeply about the meaning of E pluribus unum and how we can all together create a new national destiny. We will start with Alvin Bitsili from the Navajo Nation. Alvin Bitsili has recorded a special welcome for us. He's a member of the Dene tribe. He was born and raised on the Navajo reservation in Mexican Springs, New Mexico. And his uncle is Wilsey Bitsy, one of the original 29 Navajo code talkers. Wilsey encouraged Alvin to play the traditional flute, which is believed in Native culture to aid in healing and to bring unity. And we have a chance to hear him play now.
Yate shikistano tlinigi, she Alvin Bitsilian she, Betahnin Shlonkiahani Bush's Chin. My name is Alvin Bitsili, and I'm born for the Towering House, for the Folded Arms Clan and the Towering House people. With everything going on in the world right now, we are looking at everything, some of us in a negative way, but in reality, with our Dene teachings, we have to move forward. We can't just keep staying backwards. Everybody's talking about our the going back to normal, and in that sense, we really can't go back to normal. We have to go forward with our new normal and try to help each other in this process. In our culture, we talk about all of us being five-fingered human beings, and with us, and you put that in a fist, you have all of us. That's our heart. And in that heart, we have four attributes that we have to live by in our culture. That's love, hope, charity, and faith. Those are the four attributes. And under those four attributes, we have one creator. So in that sense, it's like we are all brothers and sisters of one family. So I want to play a prayer song for everybody, for all my brothers and sisters of the world. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, be safe out there, and may the Creator be with you all.
It's a great way to start this gathering together. And while we're still in the opening moments of our time, we have Rainn Wilson with us, who almost needs no introduction. If you don't recognize him from all his work as an actor, maybe you recognize the work he's done through Soul Pancake, spreading positivity that way. So for a quick hello, Rainn Wilson.
Oops, I was muted. You would think after 4 months of Zooming, I would know how to use this thing. Thank you so much, Celeste. I really don't have much to say right now. I'll be speaking a little bit later on, but I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this. Happy Race Amity Day, everyone. Thank you to raceamity.org. What an amazing idea to focus this on E Pluribus Unum. What an esteemed panel of speakers we have today. I am so excited to hear what Dolores Huerta has to say, what Joy DeGruy has to say. So many amazing human rights champions, and just honored to be a part of it. So excited to be watching, and I'll be speaking a little bit more later on. Thank you.
And thank you as well. He is right. There are so many incredible people that are here to talk with us today and spread some wisdom. I'd like to welcome next Dr. Robert C. Henderson, Chairman of the Board of Directors for the National Race Center for Amity. Bob Henderson is also the principal of Henderson Consulting, and in the business world, he's known for designing Wegmans Ways to Manage, which helped Wegmans become one of the nation's most inclusive and diverse grocery retailers. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bob Henderson.
Thank you, Celeste. Celeste, I'm sitting at home in Atlanta, where last night, angry and frustrated citizens blocked the interstate highway to protest the police killing of Rayshard Brooks, an unarmed Black man who was asleep in his car. And now his name is added to the long and growing list of children, women, and men who pose no threat to anyone and who were killed because of their color. These killings in our country's long history of racial injustice demand that we recognize that racism is the most challenging issue confronting America, and that racial injustice is a fundamental betrayal of the American ideal and of all of its people. Our country's motto, E Pluribus Unum, out of many people we will forge one people, was the idea of America, the first and only nation whose ancestry includes every people on earth. At their best, the founders dreamed of a new kind of nation, with liberty for all people supported by the rule of law. They said that the past was the textbook of tyranny, but the future is the Bible of the free. But today we find ourselves asking Lincoln's question at Gettysburg, whether this nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all human beings are created equal can long endure. Well, at the National Center for Race Amity, we believe that we can confront the challenge of racism and do the hard work of building a just society. But the requirement is to build unity among all people, not unity in sameness, but unity in diversity. This is the principle of the oneness of humankind. This is the principle that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, that we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny. And so we've convened this forum to say to you that all over this country, there are ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things to help build a just society. We call those efforts models of unity. There are people of all races and backgrounds working together to build understanding and cooperation and to do services that will change conditions in every aspect of American life. And we ask you to find them wherever you live and to join them. And last, we appeal to each of you to get involved. because the creation of a just and equitable society ultimately depends on the efforts of ordinary people to do the work necessary to change their habits of thought about race, their habits of the heart about race, and their habits of behavior and service about race. The work we must do requires sacrifice. It requires vigilance and moral courage, but it is the certain route to lasting change. We ask you to join us in this work. Thank you.
Okay, joining us now live is Courtney King Tunis. Courtney calls herself a professional feminist. She works as the head of activation for Supermajority. Supermajority joined forces with Pantsuit Nation, which is an organization that Courtney co-founded, to help fight for gender equity through an intersectional lens. And Courtney is a proud graduate of Williams College, University of Chicago, and Boston University as well. Hello, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Celeste. So when I think of e pluribus unum, out of many, one, it's not really the many part that holds my attention, because it's easy to understand what many means, our different histories that have brought us all together here in this country. The things that make us many are easy to list, but the things that make us one are more elusive. Not only do we often describe ourselves in terms that nod to our manyness, like Asian American or first generation American, our governmental system also gives states the ability to pass laws that differ from one another. So our manyness is a source of pride, a defining part of what it means to be 50 states who have chosen to be united. We hold ourselves together despite differing, sometimes drastically, on levels from the personal to the municipal to the national. The holding of these things together is not simple. So what is the glue? What is the binder that moves the many to become one? The moments we have lived in the American destiny of one most strongly have been when we move from sympathy, caring about the people among our many who are suffering, to empathy, truly feeling that suffering, even if it isn't happening directly to us. And finally, to compassion, taking concrete action to end that suffering. It can be easy for many of us to feel sympathy for the suffering of others. We can say how badly we feel that people among our many are being treated unfairly. But sympathy does not always move people to action. Empathy is a step beyond that. That deep feeling that someone else's pain means a shared pain. That knowledge that none of us are truly free until we all are. And finally, compassion is what moves us to make that vision a reality. To put our own singular safety and security on the line in order to catalyze the creation of safety and security for others. It is, ironically, in these moments when we act as individuals, when our personal empathy clicks over to compassionate action, and when our neighbors make the same individual transformation, that we ascend to the American one. In the last few weeks, we have seen what out of many one looks like. It looks like hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets to collectively protest police violence against Black people. The crowds at these demonstrations give us a glimpse of what that one is, a collective knowledge of who we want to be as a country and not who we do not want to be. And a collective willingness to take action to create the country that lives up to those shared standards of compassion for the many. We are in the moment of reclaiming our American destiny. May we all have the compassion to rise to it. Thank you.
Shout out from the Race Unity Circle of the Mid-Hudson Valley. In 2020, we will celebrate our second annual Race Amity Day with a virtual symposium.
Hi everyone, this is David McCullough from the American Exchange Project. E pluribus unum is the refrain that keeps us together as a nation. And if you want to take your feelings about E Pluribus Unum and put them to action, come see what we're doing at AEP. On behalf of all of my students, happy Race Amity Day.
One of the purposes of this event is to contribute to our healing as a nation, and in the process... Thank you, Courtney. One of the purposes of this event is to contribute to our healing as a nation, and in the process, engage in acts of service. For that reason, we're using this event to raise funds to support the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Fund. It's through the website navajo.fund, where you can donate right now. Indigenous people have historically suffered the most severe poverty and neglect in this nation of bounty. COVID-19 has exposed many existing inequities within the Navajo Nation. It's the largest native reservation in the U.S., spanning parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, and it has the highest per capita infection rate in America. Again, today's program is dedicated to COVID-19 relief on the Navajo Nation. Please go to the website navajo.fund and donate now. If you've always wanted to learn more about racism, white privilege, and bias, our next guest's work is a good place to start. Debbie Irving's book, Waking Up White, was inspired by her own 2 steps forward, 1 step back journey away from racial innocence. The book has helped many white Americans identify their own biases in order to engage more fully in dialogue. It was published in 2014, but it reached the bestsellers list just last week as more and more people seek to be engaged in improving race relations.
Hello, Smitty, friends of Smitty, Race Amity. Thanks for inviting me. My name's Debbie Irving, and thanks for inviting me to think about how to reset to our destiny. That's the E Pluribus Unum, destiny. I personally think it's a little trickier than maybe some of you do. There is this beautiful idea that if we just all love each other, if we just all get along, it will all be good, that all that's required is intention. And I personally, as a white person, I've been stunned by the amount of work, self-work that's been involved in really in being in relationship, not just with people of color in this work, with other white people in this work, and with the work in general. So let me explain a little bit what I mean about that. You know, racism is a global system of white supremacy that is designed to dehumanize all of us. I mean, after all, I can't dehumanize another person unless I first dehumanize myself, and to divide. And so, you know, the project is really for me to rehumanize and reunite with my one human family. And so for me, it's relationship work. And I invite people to think about some of the other relationships you have in your life, maybe with the adults who raised you, maybe if you have children in your life, children of your own, nieces and nephews, with your friends, with your colleagues, any kind of a relationship. It takes work, right? It's, you know, I think about, I'll just take my marriage, for instance. I've been married for, I think, 30 years. I should know the answer to that. It's an ongoing relationship, and so there's ongoing work. We hold the mirror up for one another, so push each other to be better versions of ourselves and help us see parts of ourselves that we might have blind spots to. So it's not sort of a one and done. I don't claim I love you and I'm going to be the best wife ever. It's an ongoing process. And so in the process of trying to be a really great white ally and fellow human being in a world that is not just trying to recover from racism, but is still very much in the throes of racism, there's a lot I have to do. I have to reset again and again and again to discover how racism has impacted me, maybe to think in better, worse, hierarchical terms, to be more sort of transactionally focused than relationally focused. Did I buy into ideas about my own superiority? I would have told you absolutely not, but the deeper I dig, the more I realize I have. It's great work. It's, boy, who doesn't want to reclaim parts of their humanity? That's what this process is about. So, again, Thanks for inviting me in to share my thoughts. I can't wait to hear everybody else's thoughts. And thank you, Smitty, for leading all of us as we reset, not just in 2020, but again and again and again. You know, a great thing about that is every time we reset, we get better at the resetting process. So again, it's all about process. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that, Debbie. One of the resources the National Center for Race Amity offers to assist in purging the racial divide is a wonderful study and discussion guide. It's called Be the Change We Seek in Race Relations. You can get a free copy of the guide at the National Center for Race Amity website. It's raceamity.org/resources. Now we're pleased to share this message from Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker. And just a heads up, after the governor, we'll hear from Grammy Award-winning children's entertainer Red Grammer. So make sure you call the kids into the room.
Hey everybody, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker here. Very special time, very unusual year so far, 2020. It was about 10 years ago in January of 2010 that the National Center for Race Amity got started right here in Boston. And I just want to say to Smitty, who does a beautiful job of running this organization, how much we appreciate all you and your teammates have done to advance the cause for dialogue and understanding for the past decade. But boy, what an unusual time. COVID-19, the murder of George Floyd, and the marches and protests and demonstrations that have taken place across the country for the past 120 days has been a game changer in so many ways. So many things we thought were true back in March, just in March, have been turned on their head and upside down as a result of the pandemic, the economic collapse that came with that, and all of the terrible, terrible stories that have come out, whether it's Ahmaud Arbery or the Coopers, Amy and Christian in Central Park, or the murder of George Floyd. And all I can say is, if there's ever been a time when the National Center of Race Amity matters, it's now. Your ability to create conversations, difficult conversations, and dialogue will be critical to our ability as a Commonwealth and our ability as a nation to find our way forward here. There's a tremendous opportunity here for progress and to right so many wrongs that have been with us for so many years. And I honestly hope that your organization and all the people who are part of your team have an opportunity to be part of making that happen. I can tell you that here in Massachusetts, we'll do whatever we can to continue to push forward, to do the things that need to be done to ensure accountability and transparency with respect to law enforcement, to deal with some of the issues around racial justice that have been not dealt with for way too long. And I hope once again that everybody takes the mantle that you all bring to this time as seriously as you do, which is the conversation, understanding, dialogue, and progress is in many respects our best and greatest weapon in dealing with so many of these challenges. God bless.
Massachusetts, we salute your leadership in being the first state in the nation to make Race Amity Day an official day of the state.
E pluribus unum means to me that we become one when we honor, see, and listen to the many.
Created a manual from the Advent of Divine Justice book and created a workbook that applies a practical application to a spiritual process.
Now it is time for some music, so you can gather the whole family. For decades, Red Grammer has taught children and their parents about the power of cross-racial and cross-cultural friendship. He won the Parents' Choice Award, and in 2005, he won a Grammy for Best Musical Album for Children. He has appeared on The Today Show, CBS This Morning, Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel. We are so proud to have him with us today.
E pluribus unum, out of many, one. I'm always looking for this in the world, and wherever I see it taking root and growing, that is a place where the light shines brighter, the smiles are broader, and the hearts are more joyful and at peace. To be sure, it takes hard, honest, individual self-reflection, and a love so big it stands up to and is greater than anger, disappointment, injustice, misunderstandings, and disheartenment. This is where our individual and collective greatness lies. This is what we are called to by the one Creator who made us all to be one. E pluribus unum. Think about it. Our bodies are the perfect example of out of many one. In each of us, trillions of cells are working together to create a walking, talking miracle of harmony. What a miracle of nature our body is. So many gifts in one place working all together. Nerves and knuckles, liver, lungs, and kidneys. Everything we need in one place working all together. So when I see the different members of the human race, I think, what a waste. We're not working more together, just like nerves and knuckles, liver, lungs, and kidneys. It all makes sense to me anatomically. Some folks' fingers, some folks' toes, notches and kneecap, nellies and nose. We're all in this together. Brian's a blood cell, Jenny's a gene. Someone's a whisker, someone's a spleen. We're all in this together. Inside your body, see what's going on. There's a million pieces getting along. Separately, they're a pile of parts, but all hooked up, the magic starts. It's a miracle of harmony. So how about you and how about me? We're all in this together. Someone's a cheekbone, someone's a chin. Angel's an elbow, Sarah's a shin. We're all in this together. Ella's an eyeball, Tessa's a tear. Someone's an ankle, someone's an ear. We're all in this together. Charlene, Cameron, Nikolai, Peg, Hetty, Mina, Vitalia, and Craig, Kurt, Elizabeth, Maggie, and Tip, Davio, Darius, Jasmine, and Skip. There's a couple of billion yous of me with ears to hear and eyes to see. We're all in this together. Zip, dip, 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 zip, dip, 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 bow. Zip, dip, 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 down. Zip, dip, dip, zip, dip, 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 bow. Zip, dip, 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 if you won't listen to me, then listen to your heart. Something's getting ready to start. Take a look around. It's just about time to power us up. Bring it online. It's a miracle of harmony. The body of humanity. We're all in this together. Zip deep, zip deep, zip deep down, zip deep, 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 deep. It's a miracle of harmony. The body of humanity. We're all in this together. We're all in this. Zip deep, zip deep, deep, deep. Ooh.
Thank you so much for that, Red. Next up, Dolores Huerta, an icon of the civil rights era. We are so pleased to have her pre-recorded message with us today. Along with Cesar Chavez and Fred Ross, Dolores co-founded the National Farm Workers Association, which later became United Farm Workers, a cross-racial and cross-cultural coalition that literally changed the lives of millions of Americans. Dolores began her organizing work at the age of 25. And still today continues to work with today's young people to inspire grassroots activism through the Dolores Huerta Foundation. She is a recipient of the National Center of Race Amity Medal of Honor and truly an American treasure.
Hello, this is Dolores Huerta, and I am so happy to be here joining you today on Race Amity Day and talking about the words of E pluribus unum. What does that mean? That means that all of us together, and we know that we never would have survived on our planet had we not protected each other and taken care of each other. And yes, here we are, alive still today on our planet Earth. But we know that we have so many issues right now in our society, and today we're talking about race. Well, there is really only one human race, Homo sapiens. And the one thing that we have to constantly repeat and affirm to everyone, that our human race began in Africa. Our human civilization began in Africa and then traveled all over the earth, all over our planet. And that's so important to remember so that we can end the racism in our society, that we are all Africans of different shades and colors. And so we can say to all of those people that are confused or that are ignorant, we can say to them in a very loud voice, in a very proud voice, we have to say to them, just get over it. All of you white nationalists, neo-Nazis out there, you really are descendants of Africa, and you are Africans, okay? And let's keep that in mind, because we know that this evil of racism, this illness of racism, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, is something that we have to overcome. We have to applaud the protesters, the marchers that were out there marching for social justice, putting an end to these inequities that we have in our society. So when we celebrate this day of race and amity, we know that we have a lot of work to do. And right now, we have to think of the things that are out there that we have to work on, like the HEROES Act that is now in the U.S. Senate, that we have to contact our senators and say, please join the House of Representatives, please vote on this bill, because we need additional funding, especially for our communities, our low-income communities of people of color. Yes, e pluribus unum, we can go forward, taking care of each other, taking care of Mother Earth, our planet, to make sure that it is there for generations to come. Yes, we can do it all together, working together. Sí se puede. Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for Dolores. Literally hearing decades of experience in that message there that helps us keep moving forward. An estimated 40% of Navajo families don't have running water, and that makes it difficult to follow the CDC's preventative measures to slow the spread of COVID-19. Many faiths and philosophers admonish us to care for the downtrodden. In the Judeo-Christian holy text from Proverbs, we learn a generous person will prosper. Whosoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And also, whosoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whosoever is kind to the needy honors God. From the text of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, he who sleeps on a full stomach while his neighbor goes hungry is not one of us. And also, a believer wants for his brother what he wants for himself. It's the golden rule. From Buddha, have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike, each has his own suffering. And the Baha'i Holy Scripture states, the poor in your midst are my trust. Guard ye my trust. So friends, please donate now to the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Fund. You can find it on the website, navajo.fund. Next up, we have Howard Ross joining us live. Howard is one of the world's seminal thought leaders on addressing unconscious bias. He's authored 4 books, including the bestseller Everyday Bias, and has worked throughout the United States and in over 40 countries. He was the first white man to serve as professor of diversity in a women's historically Black college. Thanks for joining us, Howard.
Celeste, thanks so much. It's so good to be with everybody celebrating Race Amity Day. You know, the events of the last few months have made it clear that it's time for a new beginning, an opportunity to reset our destiny and stand up for what's right against injustice and racism. The events surrounding the murder of George Floyd, coming on the heels of 3 months of shelter in place, and the reality that the COVID pandemic has had a disparate impact on communities of color, has left any conscious feeling person with a cacophony of emotions, whether it's sadness, grief, or frustration, or a kind of outrage that only comes when anger is fueled by generations of resignation and the fear that things may never change. You know, the Minnesota governor and the president commented that these protests were no longer about George Floyd, and in a way they were right, but not exactly in the way that they meant it. The point they miss, of course, is that they never were really only about George Floyd. They were, of course, triggered by the shocking murder that we saw and the grotesque way that it ignited and reignited people's rage at the systemic oppression in our society. It's repeated itself numerous times, echoes through George Floyd and so many other names: Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Michael Brown, Rodney King, and tragically so many more. And these, of course, are only the ones that we know of. As white people are typically remarkably clueless to these dynamics. We often see them as individual incidents attributable to bad apples. And as each incident occurs, we may genuinely be upset, angry, or even outraged, but they still tend to live for us as these individual incidents, which are almost occur like aberrant. But for African Americans, this is an everyday lived experience that only comes to the surface when these terrible examples appear publicly. It's not only an individual phenomenon, even though it impacts people's lives individually. It's a systemic phenomenon that surrounds our culture and the lived experience of people every day in a way that most of us who are white can't understand. It's kind of like a rainstorm. It's not a personal phenomenon, yet we get personally and individually very wet when we're out in it. And that's why we have to come together and work together for change. It won't be enough for us to be not racist. We have to affirmatively practice anti-racist attitudes and behaviors that can serve to dismantle over time the systemic patterns of racism that have plagued our society and our culture since 150 years before the United States of America was even a country. Systemic racism has formed the very structure of our society. It's paid for the economic base of our society. It's been at the foundation of the institutions that impact us the most, including and especially policing. We live in a narrative that was created and fueled by our families, by our schools, our religious institutions, and the media, and sustained to support the economic and social needs of white people. That people of color, especially Black people, are inferior to white people. But it's time to destroy that narrative. It's very clear that no one group can do it alone. No one group of people will be able to rebuild our culture into the inclusive society that was promised when Thomas Jefferson, ironically a slaveholder, wrote these words: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." It's been 224 years, and we're still trying to establish what the word all means, and that it be applied to women and not just men. But the spirit of the statement is needed now more than ever, e pluribus unum. So thank you for joining us today, and please engage with the National Center for Race Amity and help us create a country and a world in which everybody truly belongs.
Happy Race Amity, everyone. We are here in Chicago with organic oneness and like-minded organizations rebuilding our city. Everyone's working together.
We belong to an organic unit, and when one part of the organism suffers, all the rest of the body will feel its consequence.
Up next, we'll hear from scholar and educator Joy DeGruy. Dr. DeGruy's research focuses on the intersection of racism, trauma, violence, and American chattel slavery. She's also the author of the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and now host of Wellness Wednesdays on the Joy DeGruy YouTube channel. So here's Joy DeGruy.
Well, my goodness, this has been such a powerful session. So loved what everyone had to say. I think what I want to say for sure that we know, and what we know for sure, is that race is a biological fiction. Human beings are 99.99% the same. This is what we know. As the thunderstorm behind me just kind of starts, just so if I disappear, you'll know why. I think that part of the issue is that while race is a biological fiction, racism is not a biological fiction. But I think it's important to unpack what it is that's going on in people's heads around wanting to divide people. Because you got to understand that what is being used right now is a forced separation. Even Einstein said that everything is intrinsically connected, that we suffer a delusion of disconnect, which results in all the problems. But I want to speak to this issue of dividing people. Because you see, when you divide people, you can keep fear going, you can keep ignorance going, you can keep hatred going. Because when people come together in amity, which is friendly relationship, when people come together, you see it dispels the lies. It dispels the notion that we are so different that we cannot be together. In fact, the opposite happens through intimate, spontaneous, and informal association. It dispels the myth of separation. And so these folks that are provoking this notion of divide don't want us to come together, because you see, once we do, we see what's true. We see what's just. We see what's real. And a really good friend of mine kind of put this in a really good way. He says he loves gourmet food. But the reason you love gourmet food is that you have your vegetables, your onions, your little savory stuff, your cilantro, your basil, you have your vegetables, you have all this. He says, but what makes it something that we
Thank you for that lovely intro. And thank you to Smitty.
love. I don't know what just happened, but what makes this a wonderful meal is proximity. It's when everything comes together that you have this savory meal. It is when everything comes together that you enjoy the uniqueness of all of the elements. So it really is in coming together, in amity, you know, in our oneness, that we literally destroy the naysayers. But at the same time, we have to understand that justice is a core part of all of this. You cannot attain unity and this oneness and this friendliness and this friendship without justice. And in an African proverb, wonderful African proverb that says, when you pray, move your feet. Let your belief show itself in your actions. That's how we come together, and that's how we understand who and what we are as one people. Thank you so much.
Just a note that both Joy DeGruy and Howard Ross will be among the keynote presenters at the virtual National Race Amity Conference that will take place between November 19th and November 21st. The conference will explore the theme of Reset to Our Destiny, E Pluribus Unum. I will be there as well, and I hope to see you there. For more information, you can go to raceamityconference.org. Next up, friend and collaborator Liz Cheng. She is the general manager for WGBH's 7 local channels, as well as the World Channel, the national 24/7 service that features the best in public media news, information, and documentaries, especially work by and about communities of difference. World Channel has won countless national awards, from news and documentary Emmys and Peabodys to DuPonts and Webbies. Liz is a past recipient of the National Center for Race Amity Medal of Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, Liz Cheng.
Thank you for that lovely intro, and thank you to Smitty for inviting me to participate. Many of us in the U.S. live in difficult circumstances every day as a constant state of being. If we ask our Black and brown friends if they've ever received or given the talk, which is a survival guide for navigating encounters with the police and similar organizations, 100% of them would say yes. If you ask the same question to friends who are not of color, the response might be, well, what's the talk? As Black men, President Obama and his U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder rose to the pinnacle of service to this country. Yet each have experienced disturbing acts of discrimination throughout their lives. Ask those of us who are Black or brown about negative experiences, and voices fill with emotion as they recount how many times they've been stopped by the police for no good reason, heard car doors locked as they walked by, were denied opportunities, and withstood countless forms of profiling, prejudice, and even violence. It seems that non-diverse folks across the nation are having a woke moment about centuries of Black suffering in America, beginning with the first Black men and women forced onto these shores as unwilling immigrants. We've come to realize that when the founding fathers wrote about rights and equality, they meant privileged white men, and not Blacks, not women, and not the poor. In recent days, we've seen George Floyd die with a police knee on his neck, and Central Park Amy try to weaponize the police against a Black man out bird-watching. Imagine the outcome of these stories if no video had been recorded. We people of color and our allies know that it is important to listen and learn from each other and amplify the multicultural voices and perspectives of those rarely heard. We know that willful ignorance must be fought with every measure of our beings. Only great understanding and appreciation of each other can vanquish fear, anger, and hate. Now we need to convince others who do not agree as we strive together for a more just and inclusive world. Thank you.
Our next guest is literary performer and educator. Reggie Gibson. Reggie has lectured and performed in the US, Cuba, and Europe. He and his work appear in Love Jones. It's a film based on events in his life. He was the National Poetry Slam individual champion and featured on HBO's Def Poetry Jam. Reggie has also been a consultant for both the National Endowment for the Arts and the Mere Distinction of Color exhibit at James Madison's Montpelier home. Welcome, Reggie Gibson.
Thank you, Celeste, and thanks to everyone who was part of the Race Amity Day, Reset to Our Destiny, E Pluribus Unum program. This is indeed something that is lovely to be a part of. But when they speak of our time, what will they say? They will say it was a time when truth abandoned our words, when running sores passed for a false prophet's mouth, that it was when television super shrinks conducted group psychosis, when drugged up teenagers lived in a haze of oblivion. They will say it was a time that we hamster-wheeled inside the jagged jaws of death and remarked at how it hovered above us, licking its murderous lips. They will say it was a time when English spoken with the wrong accent meant an uncertain fate, and that both red and blue states forgot that God is colorblind. They will say it was a time that morality drank deeply of hemlock as intellectual cowards bowed to the powers and promises of gold. They will say that a horrible darkness whispered our names until we closed our eyes and trembled with fear until we forgot we were one, until we became the darkness we feared. They will say that this was a time of shrunken bellies and refugees, and of blood being plagued by the ache of disease, and of islands floating away like rafts of human bodies. They will say that this was the time of the bullet bite, the misogynist lyric, and the anti-truth, when we all danced to the beat of our children's cracking skulls. But let them also say that this was a time we fought against a self-inflicted genocide, that something human in us stood up to resist the Orwellian jackboot, that finally, in the rumbling throat of Ray Charles, we heard what America could become. And in the bite of Mark Twain's wit, we finally got the punchline, finally realized that manifest destiny would no longer patch the human-sized hole in our history. Let them say that it was when we said yes again and again and again to the pages of Pablo Neruda's verses, resounding with what we know is our destiny, resounding with peace for the coming twilight, peace for the wine, peace for the letters that seek us and rise in our blood, peace for the city in the morning when bread rises, peace for the ashes of our fallen, peace for all those living, peace for every water and land. Let them say that this was when the woman stepped forward to declare, I am that I am, and we men began to break ourselves of the need to break women. Let them say that this was a time we struggled against fist and fallacy, that it was of lawyers abandoning courtrooms to plant wheat in Kenyan fields, that this was when truth found our tongues again and we were unafraid to open our mouths and speak it. Let them say that we were a people of faith in a time when faith was in crisis, that we were a people of hope when it made no sense to hope at all, that we still believed that love could be as simple as the images our ancestors painted on caves, images birthing our first human songs like water and flower, the sun, moon, and star, and wind and rain and river and fire, because even as the earth shook beneath our shoes, we knew there were things that would not change. Let them say that this was a time we desperately reached through the malignant maelstrom of electronic chaos, reached through the maddening invocations of the soulless who profit from the poisonous pathology of our time, reached through the heartbreak and hatred, hoping to find hope. And we found it there with others, others with our own eyes, others with our own hands, hoping, believing, and reaching back. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for that, Reggie. I want to remind you again that the National Center for Race Amity offers free resources to assist in the work to bridge the racial divide. One resource that you may find helpful is the wonderful study and discussion guide that's called Be the Change We Seek in Race Relations. And you can get a free copy of that guide at the National Center for Race Amity website, which is raceamity.org/resources.
Not only to
We're now pleased to share a message from Mitch Landrieu. Mitch Landrieu was mayor of New Orleans from 2010 to 2018. He gained prominence for removing 4 Confederate monuments in 2015. He's also author of the book In the Shadow of Statues, and he recently launched the E Pluribus Unum Fund to help break down barriers across race and class in the South.
profound idea that we all come to the table of democracy as equals and have the right to share in its greatest gift of freedom. From our nation's...
The fuck? This is like...
Watch yourself being muted, guys.
Our founders gathered in Philadelphia over 2 centuries ago, not only to declare our independence from Great Britain, but to set up a new form of government, a republic that was more democratic in the people power sense of the word, of the people, by the people, for the people. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson poetically wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Yet that equality has never been a reality. The aspiration was to form a more perfect union, based on a simple but profound idea, that we all come to the table of democracy as equals and have the right to share in its greatest gift of freedom. From our nation's founding, we have been imperfect, of course, but the idea of America has always been strong and has always been great. The idea. Our freedoms, our diversity, our indivisibility are central to our American aspiration. As we've walked through the past few weeks, it is clear that we are still far from the aspiration because we have yet to fully reckon with the insidious realities of racism in our country. Our riches are rooted in the misery of enslaved people who first arrived in America from Africa 400 years ago. Their descendants, though technically free, were treated as second-class citizens, subjected to Jim Crow laws and widespread de facto segregation. Today, institutional racism continues in neighborhoods, in schools, in voting precincts, public transit, banks, and at every step of the criminal justice system. I have said many times that racism is this nation's most traumatic issue. Part of that stems from our instincts to run away from tough fights, to protect ourselves from vulnerability. It is much easier to talk about the virtues of diversity and inclusion. But diversity is not our problem. We have a lot of that in America, and it is for the better. Racism is our problem, and most specifically, institutional racism. I launched E Pluribus Unum last year to help find common ground and to seek new solutions. We can only fulfill America's promise of justice and opportunity for all if we break down the barriers that divide us by race and class. We have to redesign the systems that hold us back and keep us apart, because we are in fact divided by design. At E Pluribus Unum, we know that cities and towns will only thrive if they find a way to unite around a common purpose with shared responsibility and opportunity. That starts with confronting racism in all of its forms to get to the other side. We must act as one nation, not two, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, not some. And through this work, we will ultimately prove our American motto, E Pluribus Unum, out of many, one. And we are better for it. Join us online at www.unumfund.org. Thank you so much.
You know our next guest. You know our next guest from his unforgettable portrayal of Dwight during 9 seasons of the sitcom The Office. Rainn Wilson is an American actor, comedian, writer, director, businessman, and producer. He earned 3 consecutive Emmy Award nominations for his work on The Office. He's also the founder of the YouTube channel Soul Pancake, author of the book The Bassoon King, and co-author of the book Soul Pancake: Chew on Life's Big Questions. Please welcome Rainn Wilson.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much. Thanks for that nice introduction. Nice to see everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. That was me that dropped the F-bomb earlier. I just want to say I'm really sorry. No, it wasn't me actually, but it could have been me very easily. But apologies for the technical glitches. This is a lot that our coordinators are balancing right now. Listen, thank you so much for having me here today. I have some brief thoughts to share. I'm excited to address this idea of e pluribus unum and the other race tradition, race amity, racial kinship and alliance. This is a little bit of a difficult position for me to be in, however, as a white man speaking to a group about race amity and out of many one in a time when the streets are on fire with pain and a long suppressed cry for racial justice. I mean, is this the right time to be having this conversation? And all I can say is that as a man of ultimate privilege, I am choosing in these difficult times to take as much as possible a humble posture of learning, to shut up and listen and learn. And at the same time, to use my platform, my time and my energy to speak out against injustice wherever I see it. So when I think about what's going on in the world right now, I think about my extended family, which, like so many others out there, suffers from all kinds of addictions. It runs rampant. Many of my relatives I've had to hold interventions with. Many I have helped cart off to the various rehabs of North America. And trust me, that's cost me a lot of money over the years. But the hardest thing about any intervention is dealing with the denial. And that's not just the river in Egypt. Sorry, denial. Get it? Anyway, it's not denial, and denial is not just for the suffering addict either. It's the mass denial of the family around the addict that created the environment, the petri dish for addiction. That's always the toughest nut to crack. And why am I bringing this up? Because that's what we're dealing with today, denial. You know, I'm not privileged. I'm not fragile. There's no systemic racism. There's only a couple of bad apple policemen. Everyone in America has an equal playing field. Denial. And it's only after you break through that denial that any real healing work can be done. And that is basically what's happening right now. Basically, white America needs to be shipped off to racism denial rehab, the racism equivalent of the Meadows or Promises or Hazelden. But back to the topic at hand. Is this really the time to speak about amity? Is it time to speak about peace and love and unity and friendship, building bridges? Can we have these conversations even without first having justice? Is justice a prerequisite for amity? Is not this the time for rage? Isn't this the time for equity and justice, for dismantling systems and institutions that have been corrupt for far too long? And I suppose the only answer that I can come up with, again, the perspective of a white man who has never suffered one single iota of racism or prejudice in his entire life, a perspective of someone who has benefited from his white male privilege in countless ways, is that I suppose it's not really a question of either or. There's room in the world for all of it. There is room for rage, for protest, for a social justice movement, for legislation and policy changes. And there's room at the same time for the acknowledgement that we are all one beautiful human family seeking ever greater love and unity. You can have both. Because what race amity gives us, what the American ideal of e pluribus unum gives us, an idea whose time has come, is it gives us hope. It gives us a way forward. And we also need hope right now. If we can point to the past to see the bridges that have been built, the powerful Black and brown leaders, as well as their white allies that have been there for the oppressed over the decades, a focus put on the incredible unity and diversity that we see marching in the streets right now. Because like the addict emerging from rehab, once you get sober, you need something to shoot for, something to aspire to. The possibility at the end of this incredibly difficult journey that there can be recovery from racism, that there can be the possibility of serenity at the other end, one day at a time. So thank you, Race Amity Day and raceamity.org for giving us hope and for giving us one out of many. Thanks.
Today's program is dedicated to the people of the Navajo Nation who are struggling with COVID-19 and an infection rate that surpasses any other place in the United States. Please go to the website navajo.fund now to donate and show your support. We will next hear a pre-recorded message from Noam Marins, the American Jewish Committee's Director of Interreligious and Intergroup Relations. He currently serves as chair of the International Jewish Committee for Interreligious Consultations and follows the long tradition of people of faith engaging in the pursuit of racial justice.
I am Rabbi Noam Marins of AJC, American Jewish Committee. America has begun to emerge from a pandemic that has disproportionately affected people of color, but knows no boundaries of race. Americans of all colors have recently taken to the streets to protest endemic institutional racism in the wake of the gruesome death of George Floyd, another unarmed Black man killed by police. This is a moment to recall the wisdom of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, he said, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. That is a message for this Race Amity Day. We are all created in the divine image. We are all children of a God who has fashioned us in the fullness of our diversity, race, color, and creed. Be we Black, white, or brown, our destinies are intertwined. We have learned that if one of us is ill, all of us can become ill. If one of us is unsafe, all of us can become unsafe. We are all dependent upon and responsible one for the other. The Bible calls upon us to love your neighbor as yourself. The golden rule found in many religions and cultures. It doesn't say love only your white or Black or brown neighbor. They are all our neighbors, whatever their color, deserving of our unbridled love, our amity. Rabbi Hillel, favorite rabbi of 2,000 years ago, said it so well. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what am I? What is true for an individual, that we must get beyond our own narrow identity in order to be complete, is even more true for groups and peoples. We all understandably identify with family, people, race. But if we are to fulfill our human destiny, we must transcend our separations and embrace our brothers and sisters across those boundaries. And especially at this time, the boundaries of race.
But
it is time to tear down those walls that divide us. As the psalmist says, Hine matov u'mana'im, how good and pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. E pluribus unum, a meaningful Race Amity Day to all.
You're muted, I think. Muted. Muted.
We're now
Stand by,
joined by
everybody.
Dr. Johnetta Cole. And
Oh,
Dr.
you gotta
Cole,
start
if you would
again.
angle your camera down just a little bit, we would love to be able to see all of your beautiful face.
How is that?
Dr. Cole has a long history of working for greater access and equity. She was the very first African-American woman president of Spelman College and is currently the chairwoman of the National Council of Negro Women. She had the privilege to be mentored by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, a champion of education for African Americans, and worked side by side with civil rights activist Dr. Dorothy Height. Dr. Cole's passion is centered around her long-standing engagement in the struggle for social justice, and especially full equality for African American women. Dr. Johnetta Cole.
My sisters, my brothers, my siblings all, this is an extraordinarily moving and important moment that we are all in. And I'm so grateful to my brother Smitty for asking me to be a part of it. Now, I actually want to ask each of you to remember the T-shirt that our brother Smitty was wearing as he opened our time together. There on his T-shirt, you saw one of the most famous interracial friendships of all times. You saw Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, the great African-American educator who founded Bethune-Cookman College, now a university, who co-founded the United Negro College Fund. And in 1935, she founded the National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Bethune once said, "Without faith, nothing is possible. With faith, everything is possible." You also saw an image of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who once said, "You must do the thing you think you cannot do." From my heart and the hearts of 2 million Black women who were members of NCNW, we reach out to our indigenous sisters. We reach out to our indigenous sisters and brothers and siblings all to affirm our profound solidarity with you. And I personally reach out to my Shiro, Dolores Huerta. I affirm her affirmation that not a single one of us who is human has descended from any place except Africa. You know what? The sooner white folk admit that they are Africans, the better our world is going to be. If ever there was a time when people of good faith need to act, to reset to our destiny, it is surely now. As our nation is embroiled in 2 pandemics, the terrible coronavirus and the horrific outbursts of violence by some police, we cannot get it out of our memory. We cannot cease to see the knee of a white policeman on the neck of George Floyd. For 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 minutes. And for those of us as African Americans who have a collective memory of lynching, we, of course, saw it was the neck, that place where ropes went around to hang Black men, women, and every now and then, yes, a child. Well, we know we cannot easily erase that memory of George Floyd's call to be able to breathe. Nor can we erase, or should we, from our conscience the death of countless other Black men and women. So what are we to do? Well, we also cannot erase 401 years of systemic racism by one fell swoop. But here's what we can do. We can face the problem. As James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed that is not faced. Secondly, we can speak up and speak out. As another one of my sheroes, Audre Lorde, once said, your silence will not protect you. And thirdly, we can join with others who are committed to social justice. We can join with others in what is, of course, a very long journey toward that point when we cease to focus so much on our differences, when we are prepared through struggle to say, we care more about what we can do together than what we can do to separate ourselves from each other. And how do we do that? Well, as an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go ahead, go alone. But if you want to go far, let us go together. And so on this 2020 Race Amity Day, let us recommit to reset and to pledge to go together toward that day when social justice reigns over our land and indeed over our world. Thank you.
Next up, we have Judy Mira. Judy Mira is an elementary assistant principal in the Boston area and an anti-racist educator. She has a master's degree in educational leadership and is pursuing a doctorate in education with a focus on implicit bias and the impact of that bias on students of color. So please welcome Judy Mira.
feels so overwhelming and you don't know where to begin to solve it. And so I really see race amity has a place. We're living in an unbelievably complex time right now where screams for racial justice are being heard across the country. And we have such great inequities in our country right now based on race, historical, sociopolitical, socioeconomic, and all of these inequities have created this problem that sometimes feels so overwhelming and you don't know where to begin to solve it. And so I really see race amity has a place in this fight for racial justice and is one piece to the puzzle. As an educator myself, I often see throughout my day how decision-making or implicit bias impacts the work of educators. And often on a surface level, when you're having a conversation with an educator, they may say, I'm not racist, I'm not making decisions that would ever hurt my students. But unfortunately, because we live in a society where we're very often segregated based on race, and I know in the part of the country where I live, that's definitely the case. Many of our messages about race come from the media. And so we have to work and overcome those messages because our unconscious brain overrides our conscious thinking and that decision making. I see that happen as an educator, and I also see that as a mom. I'm a mother of a transracial family through adoption, and in particular with my Black and my white son, I see how they're treated differently throughout our community. And most often it's done on an unconscious level. And so I really see race amity as a way to start to break down some of that unconscious bias and to help us connect on a human level. By connecting with another person, getting to know who they are, getting to know their story, you can start to see when you hear messages in the greater world and you say, wait a second, that message that I'm hearing in the media doesn't match what I know about this person that I know, or this friend I know, or this family member. And so we're able to break that down and really stop those unconscious messages that may be hurting those around us. In my local community, I am part of our Race Amity Day committee. And in previous years, we've been able to have a larger community gathering. This year, in addition to that, we've had a series of conversations based on difficult conversations about race. And we've talked about topics such as microaggressions, institutional racism, and how we've really come to this place where we have this complex puzzle that we need to solve in order to really fight for racial justice. This year, 2020, we unfortunately can't have a large gathering in the way we've done in the past because of the pandemic. So we're promoting some local organizations because we're finding, in particular in the community where I live, that communities of color have been impacted in a greater way. And so we're promoting a few community organizations for people to support and really help to build those bridges. In the end, I really believe that human connection and that idea of from one many, that we are one nation and we need to work together and connect. And that one piece can help us to move forward. It's not the only piece to the puzzle, and I think that's always critical to know, is that we need to look at all of the different pieces to this problem and work towards solving them, but it's one piece that can help break down barriers and help really give us a greater understanding of those around us.
If you are finding this live stream from Race Amity Day helpful, please join us for the virtual National Race Amity Conference and join me in particular. I'd love to see you there. It's going to be
Greetings, everyone from Scotland.
To the 25th.
I want to introduce you to the Boston Children's Chorus.
The theme of
They've been
resetting our destiny in depth, and it will be another moment to revitalize our collective spirits as we travel, hopefully travel through the arc of justice. You can get more information at raceamityconference.org. Do please forgive us for the technical difficulties. The presentation you're seeing right now is more complicated, perhaps, than it looks. But now we have a very special performance from world-renowned opera singer Andrea Baker, along with children from around the world. British-American mezzo-soprano Andrea Baker is known for a number of distinctive and various roles. She's done interpretations on the opera stage ranging from Amneris in Aida, Fricka in Die Walküre, and the title role in Carmen as well. Andrea has also been a presenter for the BBC, beginning with the exceptional documentary A Man's a Man for A' That, Frederick Douglass in Scotland. Today, she shares with us a global children's choir rendition of Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Greetings, everyone, from Scotland. I want to introduce you to the Boston Children's Chorus. They have been bringing children from diverse communities together in song since 2003, fostering diversity, empathy, and harmony through music. This cyber choir performance of Ain't No Mountain High Enough features over 200 young people from around the world. I'm honored to have been asked to perform with them. So, without further ado, Ain't No Mountain High Enough from the Boston Children's Chorus. Reset to our destiny, e pluribus unum. Even in cyberchoir form, music has the power to move people. The beauty of music is that it touches people across all barriers of language, religion, race, or nationality. In these troubled times of sorrow, anger, fear, and change, music will be the glue that holds us all together and carries us on our long march to a world of freedom, equality, justice, and peace. I promise to lift my voice in that great choir, marching towards that goal.
People of faith and faith organizations have formed the spiritual backbone of America's long struggle for racial amity and justice throughout our nation's history, dating back to the 1700s. The Baha'is of the United States have been committed to this work for more than a century and began holding race amity conferences and events in 1921. The Baha'is are a diverse community living in every country on earth and in more than 3,000 localities just in the United States. And now we welcome the official pre-recorded statement of Ken Bowers, Secretary of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States.
Hello to everyone on behalf of the Baha'is of the United States on Race Amity Day. This occasion comes at a time of deep grief over a series of tragic deaths. In addition to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many other victims of violence, the coronavirus pandemic also has hit people of color hardest, costing countless thousands of lives and revealing yet again the way in which racism has permeated the structure of our society. As we think about the scale and tragedy of this loss, let's also hope that remembering them will inspire in us a greater commitment to the work at hand. The goal of Race Amity Day is to remind us that whatever the current struggles, and however deep-rooted racism still is in our society, none of this changes the fundamental truth that we are one. This is the essential idea of America. It means that in all our diversity, we are all one family, and that there is value and sacredness in every human being. Abdu'l-Baha, who came to the United States in the early 20th century, initiated the first Race Amity Conference on which today's event is inspired. At that time of severe racial unrest, he urgently called upon Americans to act with seriousness to address the issue. In the century since then, after courageous and sacrificial effort, progress has been seen, but the struggle continues, and we need healing. The work remains to build models of race amity in our personal lives, our communities, and in how the institutions of our society operate. The Baha'is share the confidence of many others in the ultimate coming together of the entire human race in justice. But we do not believe that the road will be an easy one. It will involve ceaseless work, sacrifice, and struggle. To achieve it requires a vision that inspires our consciousness and brings us together in solidarity with all people. So as we in America continue to build a more perfect union, truly just, compassionate, and united, we will increasingly bring happiness to ourselves and serve as a beacon of hope to the rest of the world. The great prophets and teachers of all ages held an essential faith, the faith that, in the words of one writer, humanity will not merely endure, it will prevail. And it will prevail because of the strength of spirit that God has given us and because we are not forgotten by Him. In honoring Race Amity Day, we celebrate the aspirations and ideals we all hold dear. And joining hands with people of all races, creeds, and backgrounds, we today rededicate ourselves to that vision. I close with these words of Baha'u'llah. The utterance of God is a lamp, whose light is these words. Ye are the fruits of one tree, and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illumine the whole earth. Thank you.
Joining us now with a pre-recorded message from Ireland is our dear friend Don Mullen. Don is the first non-American awarded the Race Amity Medal of Honor. He is a best-selling investigative author and filmmaker. Smitty and Don are actually working on a Frederick Douglass Daniel O'Connell initiative, developing race amity between the great diasporas of Africa and Ireland in the USA.
Greetings, my brother, Dr. William Smitty Smith, and to everyone at the National Centre for Race Amity, and everyone gathered for this convention. Greetings from Ireland. I think we've all been traumatized over the last few weeks in terms of what has happened, but certainly a Rubicon has been crossed. The outrage and the outpouring that followed in the aftermath of the murder of our brother George Floyd is something that we must build upon. How can we ever forget his appeals? I can't breathe, brother, I can't breathe, and then a sure sign that someone is dying when they begin to call for their mama. Smitty knows this more than any of us in terms of his time as a medic with a platoon in Vietnam. We have got to become now, in honoured memory of George Floyd, his breath. We must intensify our work on race amity. We must work hard to take the toxicity out of the race and the racism debate. And we need to focus on the fact that there always has been an alternative tradition where people do come together, where they can work together, where they can live as fellow human beings in a rainbow nation. That's what E pluribus unum means, out of many, one. And let me tell you very quickly a story. In 1989, I learned of an act of humanity from the Choctaw First Nation when they sent $170 as famine relief to the suffering Irish in Ireland. And so in 1989, I went back to thank them for that generosity at the height of the Great Famine in 1847. And I invited them to Ireland. And as a result, a great friendship has developed, including a long-time friendship with the distinguished Choctaw artist and writer, Waylon Whitedeer. And recently, Irish people aware of that story learned of an appeal by people from the Navajo First Nation seeking funding to help with their tackling of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Navajo people were first of all surprised when the trickle became a stream and then a river, and then virtually an ocean of donations began to come in. And when they investigated it, it was because the Irish in Ireland and across the world were so moved because of the memory of the Choctaw donation during our famine that they actually have now contributed at least $5 million. So it shows you when we work together, when we love each other, when we express friendship with each other, that we can change the world. And that's what we've got to do, and not allow George Floyd and others, countless others, deaths to go in vain. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Our next guest is Colette Phillips. She's president of Colette Phillips Communications, Inc., and founder of Get Connected with a K. That's Boston's premier inclusive business networking event series and social networking platform. It curates meaningful business and social connections among people of diverse cultural backgrounds. Please welcome Colette Phillips.
I am so sorry, but I am so absolutely delighted to be joining Smitty and celebrating Race Amity Day. I could think of nothing more timely than this time, and with the theme of resetting our destiny, e pluribus unum. It's unbelievably but profoundly true that at this time in our country, what we need more than ever is the redemptive power of love, forgiveness, reconciliation, and healing. I think so much about the fact that a young man who grew up in apartheid America spent his entire life devoted to breaking down barriers, bringing people together, and has created a day that will outlive him because it is now written into the books of our country in our national Congress. And that is the work that Smitty has done and devoted his entire life to. I think too, when I think of the term e pluribus unum, I think of Nelson Mandela. And in 2 weeks, we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of his visit here, of which I had the privilege of working with him and coordinating public relations. And I think about the fact that there's a lot of parallels between Dr. King and Dr. Smith. Dr. Mandela, who has had many PhDs, honorary, and Dr. Smith. Because when he got out of prison, he could have come out an angry, bitter man bent on revenge. But what he did is what we still need to do in America. And perhaps this day is a beginning where we could bring people together in love, in harmony, in peace, for the power of healing, because that is what it's going to take to really address this pandemic called racism. I loved what Dolores Huerta said, that we came out, all of us, out of Africa, and we went across the world, became a kaleidoscope, mosaic, a Joseph coat of many colors. And out of that, we are truly one people. And I want us to stand together. And I wrote a little something that says, as we work to dismantle structural and systemic and institutional racism, may we always carry with us the love for humanity of Mahatma Gandhi, the passion and fire for social justice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the willingness to stand up for what is right, like Rosa Parks, the dignity and respect for all people, like Nelson Mandela, the humility and compassion of Mother Teresa, the courage to listen and lead with your heart, like Anwar Sadat, and the hope, forgiveness, and optimism of Anne Frank. Thank you, Smitty, for this opportunity, and all of your friends at Get Connected, thank you. And we are so thrilled to celebrate this beautiful day with you.
We know that talking about race is not easy, no matter what your color is. So if you want a little bit of help of that, you can download our conversation guide. It's called Be the
Race Amity
in Race Relations,
combined with education
at raceamity.org/resources. As we move toward the end of our program, we'd like to share a special message from the Honorable William F. Winter, Governor of the state of the Mississippi from 1980 to 1984. Governor Winter is a champion of racial and educational equity, and his William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation brought the first ever Deep South dialogue about racial reconciliation to the University of Mississippi. Please enjoy this pre-recorded message from the Honorable William F. Winter.
Race Amity
combined with education is the key to the future of this country. We have a very diverse demographic situation in the United States, increasing the demographic. And we have to know each other. We have to learn to live with each other. We have to respect each other. We have to recognize our differences, but respect those differences. Understand that we don't all have to come from the same cultural background or the same ideological background, but we do come from the same basic background of being a human being. We're all members of one race. We are members of the human race. And I think in states such as mine, the state of Mississippi, highest percentage of African Americans of any state in the nation. This country as a whole, perhaps the most diverse democracy in the world. I think it is a key to our ability to exist as a great nation, where people understand the diversity of their backgrounds and their race, but at the same time, the commonality of their interests, the absolute necessity of learning to respect each other, and to know that out of that understanding will come a relationship, a total human relationship that will put down so many of the biases and prejudices that we are still afflicted with. This country is too rich, it has too many great resources, too many great people to be handicapped by a continued racial bias. The strength of this country lies in its diversity. And I think it's a key to our future. And a younger generation must learn that. And race amity is at the background, is at the very base of accomplishing that result. And unless we accomplish that result, we're not going to be as great a people as we ought to be.
Our final live presenter is American actor and musician Penn Badgley. Penn has done a number of films, but is best known for his role as Dan Humphrey in the CW series Gossip Girl. He currently stars as Joe Goldberg in the Netflix thriller series You. Welcome, Penn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sure you thought they'd pull out the fireworks at the end. That is not the case. I think I'm here, as Rainn said earlier. I want to underscore that in a learning and listening posture. I want to underscore what everyone has said before me and just offer a few thoughts. Thank you, Smitty, for inviting me. When he first posed this question of e pluribus unum, honestly, what I eventually came to is that now it feels like it has felt like a lie. Out of many, one. What could that possibly mean? Out of many lies, one hope. Out of many nightmares, one dream. You know, I kept trying. I think it could be inspiring. It should be. But if it does represent a truth, a seed of truth, then e pluribus unum is a seed in need of water, a cell in need of oxygen. It cannot breathe. It is being choked. Our seed of truth is perilously close to becoming an empty, rotten shell. This is why, to me, it has felt like a lie. Any talk of oneness without justice, without being witness to and healing our grotesque history, makes ideas of unity or hope, or even God, to seem false or offensive or repulsive. And we stamp it on our money. You know, we stamp it right on our money. That speaks a lot louder to me than Latin does. So that tells me something. I'm having trouble believing it. I am having trouble seeing it. However, I do feel in my bones that it is possible, and my faith in humanity, my faith in God, tells me that it is inevitable. So then the awesome question is how? How are we one? How do we get there? How soon? we know biologically it's a fact of nature. It's already here. We are all made from the same substance. So I'm thinking, what false assumptions have we internalized? Not so much about each other, but about ourselves. I guess I'm also thinking particularly about white people here, you know, like what do we believe about ourselves that tells us that we are better, or, you know, for any groups of people, lesser, whatever it is. What lies have become truth? What truths have been called lies? We need to learn about that. We need to learn about our intellectual history, which shapes all of our ideas. And, you know, I mean, I guess I think there are two great resources for that intellectual and emotional investigation. One, obviously, we learn from history and real history, which is not always easy to find. But second, we learn in friendship. And it's been highlighted in today's program a lot. So, you know, I've been wondering if one of the most overlooked paths to justice and progress is this, the building of true friendships, true community building. We're talking about genuine relationships born and growing across all sections of society, and all the capacities for action that then develop therefrom. You know, and as a white person, my experience has been that it is bonds of love that enable us to overcome the nauseating shame, the fear, the pain we face when we face this moment, which is facing our history. The path before us is long and thorny, but through radical friendship, I think it is full of discovery. So I landed on this. Still needs work. It's a work in progress. Out of many friends, one family. Thank you again so much for including me today, and continue with the program.
That's a pretty awesome place to land. Out of many, one family. Thanks to Penn. Thanks to everyone who sent greetings for Race Amity Day celebrations. We're going to close with a statement from Smitty.
You're muted. Try again, Smitty.
Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much for guiding us through this rather long afternoon, but wonderful afternoon. I am so grateful for all of you having participated, for all of you who have stayed with us through this nearly 2 hours, and for all of you for your compassion and love. I've been getting texts and emails during the program. But thank you kindly for joining us. May this afternoon we find something that will help us, each of us in some way, become the better in us. I want to remind you all that next year we will be celebrating the centenary of the first National Race Amity Conference with a wonderful event in the nation's capital. We'll be announcing the specific date in June of 2021. So it will be a momentous year for us at the National Center for Race Amity. We will also, during that year, open the National Race Amity Institute, which is presently under construction in the city of Atlanta. And we hope that that institute will help bring and serve as a salve or a balm for right now the many challenges that that community is facing. Marjan Yavardi, who's working with the Atlanta Redevelopment Authority to develop the National Race Amity Institute in the historic Mount Auburn section of that city, and that's the area where Dr. King was born, and that's where the Ebenezer Baptist Church is, and the National Park honoring Dr. King. We look forward to that event happening next year. And again, you'll be getting our emails and letters concerning all of these events in the coming weeks. So I'm going to stop now. Don't want to go beyond the hour, but I would like to introduce Kyla Powell, who will close this event with a prayer for America.
O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors, and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal. Abdul Baha.
What E pluribus unum doesn't mean is that we all have to be the same. It's like music. It's nice to sing the same note, but when it gets really beautiful is when we sing different notes that harmonize.
Hi, I'm Connie.
Hi, I'm Sohana, and we're from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Since January 2019, we've had ongoing conversations on race amity with friends and coworkers to raise awareness on issues relating to racism.
Race Amity Forum, Detroit Metro, wishes you a happy Race Amity Day.
Hello, my name is Scott Nix, Chief of Police for the Sudbury, Massachusetts Police Department. And to me, E pluribus unum means respecting everybody in your community.
Our watchword is
Unity in diversity, not conformity. Advocates for Race Amity, Pinellas County.
I'm Henry Hayes, the town manager for Sudbury, Massachusetts, and I've spent almost 30 years in the United States Air Force, and this I have learned. Nothing beats unity.
With brotherhood from sea to shining. I wish for you to live in unity and peace. This I wish for all of you to be as waves, waves of one sea. This I wish for you. to live in happiness and love.